Today I'm going to be presenting my research about the inequality between students, families, and schools during the pandemic with the adjust to online schooling. So inequality in education has existed throughout history. We've seen this with segregation, when blacks could not receive as good of an education as white people could. We've seen this with women before they got their right to vote and do other things. We've seen this with social class. Poor social classes could not afford books, education, or anything else, and mostly had to do physical jobs in order to be able to make money, since they could not afford the same quality of education as high class families could. So every student learns differently in school, and most kids learn in video, in visual form, audio way, but a lot of kids learn in a kinesthetic way, which is having to be hands-on, touching something in order to be able to really learn. Well, online schooling takes that away. It sets kids in their homes by themselves, and it gets very hard for them to be able to learn and actually process the information in order to be able to keep up good grades. Online schooling is beneficial for some students. Some students worked quite well online, it was great. But other students have issues such as developmental disabilities, family situations, having toxic household environments, or even social class disparities. With the developmental issues, a lot of kids that have severe issues such as autism, learning disabilities, ADHD, etc., cannot learn online. A lot of their brains cannot handle the process of having to look at a computer and not having that hands-on attention, hands-on instructions, and that personal connection you get with teachers as they take care of you and lead you through your education. A lot of them do not have the ability to have the self-discipline to be able to do the online schooling. This fits into the family issues because a lot of families then have to take care of their kids and have to lead the kids through it, basically turning the families into the teachers. Well, this is very hard for some families in single parent homes, working families, or if there's a generational gap between kids and their guardian, such as a kid who lives with their grandparents, and their grandparents may not be as technologically advanced as, let's say, middle-aged mothers and fathers maybe. So this causes issues when families need to go to work. For instance, if a single mom or dad needs to go to work and they can't afford to stay home and take care of their kindergartner, their kid with disabilities, etc., they then have to pay for babysitting, they have to pay for daycare, which adds on more bills. They may get further into debt, and then eventually they may end up dropping out of school altogether. Not being able to afford it ties into the social class disparities. Middle class, high class, a lot of the schools can afford to pay for Chromebooks, they can pay for iPads, laptops, some form to be able to provide for their students in order to be able to have them have the online education. While schools in poorer districts or inner city schools a lot of times cannot even afford to have transportation to take their students to school, let alone the expensive technologies that comes with laptops, Chromebooks, iPads, etc. And a lot of families cannot afford to have internet at home and cannot afford to be able to pay for that online education, which then they end up in the situation once again where the kid is either dropping out of school or they have to go to school anyways and they don't get to have the opportunity to feel safe and feel that they can just stay at home and not have to go out and be risked. Online education was created with the point in mind that everybody is the same, that students learn the same, families can afford the same thing, schools can afford the same thing, and that's not the reality that we live in. And so a lot of these kids are getting left behind. Students that had straight A's before are now failing their classes because they can't focus. They don't have that self-discipline to be able to sit at home and get that work done. So kids are getting discouraged from school. They're backing out. Kindergarteners are getting learning stunts because they're not able to have that social interaction, which is very critical at that age level. It has caused an extreme inequality, an extreme stratification between these kids in schools. And it can be very detrimental if we don't attempt to bridge the gap that has gotten further in this inequality. There's always been inequality in schooling, but since the pandemic has started, the gap has furthered, and we're going to lose some kids if we do not pay attention. Thank you for listening.